So growing up, I had a friend who used to say, Jews are born with guilt, but Catholics have to go to school for it. I went to school for it. Now, I went to school for it from kindergarten all the way through college. Catholicism was a huge part of my growing up. I mean, in fact, my mom is a former nun. And you would think, as a former nun, that would qualify her as the most religious person in our family. But by the time I got to the preteen years, I really gave her a run for her money with that, because I discovered that religiosity was a great way to manage all of the anxiety about puberty. So I really dove into that. And the best tool that Catholicism has for this is confession. I loved confession. Now, I love the idea of being able to walk into a room, tell a guy everything that I felt shame about, all the guilt, everything I did wrong, all my sins, and he would forgive me, wipe my soul clean. I could walk out of the confessional, walk out of the church, go into the street, get hit by a car, die, and know that I am going right to heaven. Because as great as heaven was in all Catholic school, it sounded wonderful. The real motivating factor, though, for me, was a way to avoid hell. I was scared the crap out of me of hell. And when I think about it now at 43, the image that comes to mind is the same image of the little kid version of learning about hell. It's being trapped in this windowless, doorless room filled with flames, and you're just burning, but not burning to die, because it's just going to be eternal. It's only akin to like when you're stuck in the subway in mid-August and there's no AC, except that you're like 98% sure you're going to get above ground at some point. You're going to feel good again. But hell is eternal, and what scared the shit out of me was that. And the only guarantee that I wasn't going to end up that way was confession. So for those of you who haven't had the experience, growing up, I was at St. Eugene's Church in Yonkers, New York. You go into church and you would find a seat in a pew, which is basically the Catholic word for bench. And sit, and if it's during a holiday, there's going to be a long line, so you're going to be waiting for a while. And you're going to sit down, and it was always really dim and dark in the church, which was good, because you didn't want to know anyone there. You didn't want anyone to see you, make eye contact, because you're all about, you know what you're all going to do there. So you sit there, you take in all the incense that's burning constantly for absolutely no reason. And you're supposed to be doing what they call the examination of conscience, thinking about all the sins you've committed so you can tell them to the priest. And my church had this helpful thing, and helpful is in air quotes, helpful thing where they would give you this laminated piece of paper, which basically had the 10 Commandments on it, which is great. Catholic school of your life, you don't need anyone to remind you what the 10 Commandments are. But what this thing did is after each commandment, it would have 2 or 3 questions that would kind of jog your memory of some sins that you might have forgotten. And this is important, because you could easily get through the 10 Commandments and thinking, I didn't do any of these. Some of them are really bad. You get to number 5, thou shalt not commit murder. 12, 13, have not committed I still haven't committed a murder. But the questions would be did you look at anyone with murderousness in your heart? Did you kill off a friendship, a relationship, stuff like that? And then you're oh yeah, I did that. I have, and you're tallying up the more things to do. So, preteen, teen years, reading through my examination of conscience, getting to thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, and thinking, I'm going to have to talk about masturbation. And what was going to make this so difficult was it was not like you see on TV confession where you walk into a small room and there's a screen between you and the priest in another place, and it's anonymous and you're just speaking to that. The way this worked, you'd go out of the dim church into this brightly lit room. The priest would be sitting right there in front of you. The only thing between you is this small table, and it would be the guy that I would talk to during the week at school, because I would talk to all the priests. It was the guy who would say Mass the week before, and I have to look him face to face and talk about jerking off. And I thought, there's no way this is going to happen. I'm not going to do this. So any good 13-year-old who's very anxious is like, I'm going to come up with a loophole. So I was thinking about how we've learned that there are, sinning is on a continuum. You have your really bad mortal sins, and you have everything else that we would call venial sins. And I was thinking, wherever jerking off is in that continuum, it's got to be not as bad as having sex with an actual person. And my theory went, if you confess to something that is like a worse sin, but it's in the same category, then anything else would get forgiven. So I'm like, I got it. So I'm moving down the pew, it's almost my time. I walk into the room. There's the priest, Father Thomas. He, older guy, but not as old as most of the priests in the church. Kind of red-faced, which is like every other priest in the church. Had kind of a constipated look in his face. And I sit down, and he goes like, how long has it been since your last confession? And they actually asked that, which is crazy. And I'm like, it was about a week, because at that time the anxiety was high enough that I was going weekly. And what sins have you committed? So I think I'm going to start with the easy stuff. Lied to a teacher. Looked with murderous intent upon my brother. A lot. Take a big breath, look at him right in the face, and I say, and I've been having sex with women. And he gives me he clears his throat and gives me kind of a fairly insulting, like, you? And then he says it. You say your 10 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, go in peace, all of that. And I think, shit, I beat the system. I woke out the truck, I feel like I can go hit by a car, it's great, everything's gonna be fine. And then I think, shit, I just lied to a priest in confession. To this day, it's the most meta thing I've ever done. As I got to be an adult, and I gave up all the beliefs, all of the tenets of the faith, all that stuff, I searched for some kind of secular confession, because we still missed that idea. And I thought I found it when I discovered psychotherapy.
Oh.
This is going to sound familiar. I would get there, I would get to my therapist early, I would sit down and take out my journal, I would just write down everything I was feeling bad about, all the shame, all the guilt, everything I did wrong, wait my turn, go in, hello Teresa, and I would just vomit it all out to her. And I did this for weeks. At one point I actually took out the journal because I was so anxious I didn't want to forget anything. And at that point she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm venting all the stuff, everything I feel bad about, I'm confessing, and she's like, oh, hold up, I am not a priest. I am a Jewish lesbian psychoanalyst. And we are not doing this anymore. And it was in that moment that I began to realize, and it's what I get to do for others now, because I've become a therapist myself. I discovered for the first time empathy, self-compassion, and the one thing I never got in confession, acceptance. Thank you.